A black hole.
Good evening, Earth.
You know, a black
This is Adam
hole
Sturch
has at its
broadcasting from the
center a
Mushroom
place
Mansion,
where
Taos,
the
New Mexico,
equations don't
working on
sum.
oil painting
In other words,
contact.
where it doesn't make any
Alright,
sense.
I've been staring at these ants for a little while, and it occurred to me that I inverted their thorax shape, which is a problem, and it's bugged me. So what I'm going to do is make all the foreground ants larger, which I think would work better for the composition anyway, fix their thorax, and
the energy equations balance. Well,
then we can progress further.
Mind is undergoing
Hopefully.
this kind of gravitational collapse, and information is being compressed to such
So
a
foreground
degree
ants larger,
that
thorax
eventually it will not
flipped.
all fit in the present, and then the information begins to move off into the only dimensions available to it, which are the past and the future, exactly as if you fill a glass with more water than it can hold. Once it has more water in it than it can hold, the water begins to flow down the sides and out into the larger domain. And so I think that people who try to use history, which is usually male egos and male-dominated institutions, are actually tremendously frustrated. We don't see it that way because to us it looks like they win every battle, because they win every election. But because they win every election, it is their job to manage this situation. It's a case of you want it, here it is. And they have not a clue as to how to manage it. So their thing is all about the headaches of ownership, while our political point of view is pretty much about the headaches of disenfranchisement. But I think that there is some kind of event ahead of us in time, not far, on the order of 20 to 40 years, that is casting an enormous shadow back through the lower dimensional slice of being, which we call history, so that religions and mystical visions and the visions of revolutionary leaders are a response to flickering intimations of this transcendental object that is pulling intelligence out of the organic matrix of life on this planet in a process that is occupying 50 to 100,000 years. It's extremely unusual what's happening, and a process that creates a series of self-transforming bootstrap steps in a period of 100,000 years means it's a unique kind of phenomenon. There's never been anything like it on the planet. What it is leading toward is hard to say, but I know that its values are the values of life, connectedness, primacy of experience, and caring. And it is using the historical process to wire us all together in some way. Control mechanisms are spreading through the society at an enormous rate. You know, it's interesting, one of the horror fantasies of the 1950s, which was when, you know, this conservative, straight, crew-cut point of view was really at its height. One of the fears of the future that people would just toss off offhandedly was, well, in the future, machines will take over and run everything. And this notion of the control of the planet wrested from the sure hands of noble human beings and instead betrayed into the power of calculating automatons was a great science fiction theme of the 50s. But it's interesting how impartial computers are. They are not ideologues. They are not, they're managers. And remember I said the struggle was between the shaman manager and the ideologue politician. And so I think the cybernetic matrix is a tremendous tool for feminizing and radicalizing and psychedelicizing the social matrix. I see computers as entirely feminine. I mean, people have a reaction to this because they think that because men spend a lot of time around them and seem obsessed with them, that somehow it isn't feminine. But men have always been obsessed with the feminine. I mean, yeah, I think it was D.H. Lawrence who said what life is really about is men keeping women from ever suspecting how truly obsessed we are by them. So I think, you know, that this linking together, feminizing, cybernetic thing is part of the anticipation of this object at the end of time. What seems to be happening is we're all flowing together. And we keep talking about unity, globalism, completion. Well, you better, you know, you're going to get what you ordered. And I think what it means is probably the dear individual, which, don't be fooled, is a soft description of the male ego run rampant. The democratic individual, the citizen, this notion is in fair peril to be replaced by the person, which is a much more nubbly kind of concept. The person is not an interchangeable part. The citizen is. The citizen is a model of society based on the Industrial Revolution of the 18th century. But the person is a harking back to a pre-print model, and this is being set loose. It's what the hippies were, essentially. What they were trying to evoke was this do-your-own-thing idea. So that there's a paradox here. The do-your-own-thing idea is somehow leading to this vectoring toward a unified cultural state where everybody is involved in everybody else. It's all right that it's paradoxical because there's no reason that it should be reasonable. Yeah.
Address the difference between the LSD experience and mushroom experience. There's a difference, and also your feelings about marijuana as an older state.
Well, the LSD experience is, I mean, I speak only from my own experience, of course, but to me it seemed more psychoanalytical than psychedelic. More, I mean,
Alright, I'm much happier with the shape of those ants. So let's give them some legs and some antennae with a smaller brush, and this painting will be moving.
It was not a reliable visionary drug for
Stuck
me.
on those ant
It
shapes.
caused me to have funny
There's some
ideas.
pretty
It seemed mostly to be a
ant
thought
anatomy
thing,
drawings.
but not a
I built a roundhouse the other day that had my sketchbook in it.
And somehow,
was
in
looking at
my
those ant drawings,
education,
like, what the
somewhere
fuck?
along the way, I had picked
How
up
could I have
this
inverted the
bias
shape of the
in
thorax on my
favor of the
painting?
visual
Yeah,
channel.
I kind of liked it.
I
I just
wasn't
tried to justify it as, you know,
satisfied
being
with LSD.
whimsical
I
or
wanted
childlike or whatever, but it
those
was just
things
a
that have
blatant fuck up, and I need to
where
fix
he
it.
talks
So.
about, you know, jeweled ruins and phosphorescent
So I don't mind
maidens in
the
diaphanous
childish
gowns,
gestural
howling demon
brush
songs
strokes,
beneath
but I
a
want the shape
violet
to be
moon.
accurate, you know.
And that was what I wanted, not funny ideas. And what I
And then
found,
next, I
and
think
I
we'll
worked pretty diligently at it with LSD, I found that my most
start the
satisfying
leaves.
LSD experiences
I'm
were
working
while
on the
smoking
patterns in the fish
hash.
and the
And that then that
hornet
really did
merging
do
into the
something
water
interesting,
sky
sent it
and the
skittering
leaves.
off in these wonderful visionary directions. But these things do have characters. And this is something probably worth talking about in this group, that at low doses, everything seems like everything else. In other words, a little mescaline, a tiny amount of LSD, a little bit of MDMA, a tiny tad of psilocybin, all of these things simply register as wired, arousal, eager to hear what's being said and follow the thread of the argument, and just absolutely fascinated by what's going on, no matter what's going on. But as you raise the dose, the character of these things begins to appear. And for instance, psilocybin is, to my mind, in many ways the most anomalous. Because, number one, this thing about how it speaks, it does speak, and none of the others do. I mean, the others you may occasionally, in years of fiddling, get a sentence or two, but the mushroom just is voluble. It just comes on and raves, and sometimes and people have said to me, it really does rave. I mean, it's not a calm, it's not a go with the flow rap. It's a rap about planetary destiny in the next 10 million years and the last 10 million years, and it's this trumpet blast, Cecil B. DeMille, hyper, real like that. Well, then something like ayahuasca, which is this thing these shamans use in the Amazon basin that's based on DMT and monoamine oxidase inhibitors, you take that and it's about the rivers and the jungle and these people and their humility and dignity and your humility and dignity and the earth and plants and life and water and sunlight, and it's this totally earthbound terrestrial life affirming thing, and it does not speak, but it's an eye, and its language is visual, and it, after an ayahuasca trip, you just feel like your eyes are literally bulging out of your head. I mean, you've spent 6 hours looking, just, not really doing anything else but looking. Well, then something like Datura has this watery, magical, forgetful, kind of witchy, occult quality. It's, shadows, and a peculiar quality of erosion of your own attention, so that, no matter who you are, you find yourself wandering through empty colonnades and under a sky pregnant with the possibility of rain. I mean, it's this strange, De Klerk-esque kind of landscape. DMT has another quality. It seems to convey you into just a world of utter outrage, where all linguistic, sensory, and analytical machinery is just brought to a screeching halt. So it's important to learn what you like and to learn what you can put up with. Someone at a recent weekend who takes mushrooms quite religiously and quite regularly, and I said, does it ever get easier? And he said, no, it never gets easier. Each time what I pray as I go into it is, please let me be able to stand a little bit more. Because, finally it is the real mystery. So the only way your relationship to it can end is by you averting your gaze. Because no human being can gaze into it endlessly, because it is, it is what it says it is. It is the other. I was groping for the Hebrew, but not finding it. Yes. Yeah.
Just want to follow up on that question a bit. Stan Grof describes LSD as a non-specific amplifier. And by that he means it amplifies what's already existing in the psyche. and he uses this metaphor that LSD serves as a kind of telescope or microscope, in that it does not itself produce the experience, but rather it enables you to have an experience that's already there in potentia, latent in your psyche. And I just wonder if you could comment on that, since you just have now described the various psychoactives as having a character. So in his framework, would you disagree with it, or would you say that the various telescopes are tinted with a certain lens, or how would you sort of reconcile?
Well, at the beginning of your question, you characterized LSD it's that it is a non-specific amplifier, but of the contents of the personal unconscious and the sensorium. What people notice about LSD is either what's right or wrong with themselves, or how freaky the world is. You know, a bug, a drop of water, it can be anything. But you discover the strangest things on LSD, and they're real things. I mean, relationships of reflections and windows. And I mean, it basically seems to be a tremendous amplifier of attention and analysis of the input of attention when directed into the outer world. And when directed into the inner world, it's an analytical tool for looking at past history of the individual, which is what I call the personal unconscious. The thing that always puzzled me about enthusiasts of LSD was that they claimed that beyond this lie what they called the white light, which they put great store by and made all kinds of Buddhist associations to it. I don't know if I've ever had the white light experience. As I go deeper into strong psychedelics,
now really
what
like
happens is multiplicity
this red.
proliferates.
So I'm
There
going to
is
carry
not a
that texture up
simplifying.
into the
There
smaller
is
ants,
a further
as well as the
and
dress
further and
of the
further
figure
complexifying. And
from where they're coming
I
from.
was talking to someone at Ojai Foundation about this, and they said, but surely beyond all this, there is some kind of simplification and unity. And I said, well, that I wasn't sure, that maybe it's just, an infinite samsaric ocean in all directions, in all dimensions, forever. Ketamine comes closer to providing a no observer, nothing observed kind of state, but you can't do much with that. You can have it, but there is, of course, with the dropping of all boundaries, a feeling of release. But what I'm interested in are bringing back artifacts to share with the tribe. And I've accepted that they will come in the form of either things that can be painted or things that can be said. And since I'm better at the saying than the painting, I work like that. Stan is a good friend of mine. We've talked about this over the years. I just can't confirm his maps of the psyche. I don't see those states occurring along a continuum the way that he says they do. I think it's much more chaotic, and that if his categories work to facilitate psychotherapy, then that's good, because that's what he's interested in. In other words, I see his maps as very, very provisional and useless and useful for navigating. But I doubt that when we get the final maps, if we ever do, that they will bear terrifically much resemblance to that. And I think he would agree with that. I mean, we're not at loggerheads about this. Anybody who works with psychedelics, their ultimate position is that, hell, they don't know. And on that note, why don't we go to lunch, and we will reassemble at 2 o'clock. If you're new to the neighborhood, Haight Street is 2 blocks down Ashbury, and there's a plethora of restaurants to choose from down there. Okay, I think we're all here. People are pulling together. So we'll talk for an hour or so, and then we'll break, and then we'll go to 4. Well, this afternoon I thought we would do some operational homework and academic referencing. One of the most important things about all of this that we've been discussing is to get the information straight, to be as well informed as possible. I mean, it's as important to be well informed in this area if you're going to do it as it is to be well informed about procedures in skin diving and that sort of thing if you're going to do that. Does that make you happy? Before I talk about that, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, hi. My name is Stephen. I met you at Ralph's wedding.
Right, I was in here.
And we have a mutual friend, Dr. Marsden, who told me about some of his experiences. And I have a little bit of a background in academic herbology and pharmacognosy. I've studied pharmacy and chemistry and naturopathy. So I've had a long-standing interest in pharmaceuticals and the biochemistry of the brain. But due to my paranoia of my professional license, I let it control me until about 6 months ago when I was in Sedona and started to commune with the goddess in the rocks, and she said, go for the mushroom.
And so what do you do for a living now?
Well, I basically did not tell the Department of Defense that I'm employed with about these experiences. I'm the director of pharmacy services for the military and board and the city of Monterey. So,
Maybe you should tell.
I don't think so.
No.
I'm not ready for it.
Maybe you could spike their punches.
Well, boring from within is always an effective strategy, maybe the only effective strategy when you're as few in numbers as we are. Well, welcome. I'm sure that whatever we said that you missed will be said again and is on tape. Okay, well, what I thought I'd do at the beginning of this afternoon today, apropos of this idea that people should inform themselves about what's going on, because though you can't find out everything, you can find out a lot more than most people know. And it's amazing to me the number of people who would pay a couple of $100 to come to a weekend with a person like myself to learn about psychedelics when a couple of $100 would get you quite far in a bookstore, and you know, the public library is a marvelous resource for this stuff. So I hauled some titles off my own bookshelf, and I'll go through them. This is by no means all.
All
I
right.
just simply chose books
I think that does it for the moment.
were important to the field.
It gets all of the
or
foreground
I felt
ants,
would be fairly
thoraxes.
easy for someone to obtain if they wanted
Thorax?
to look into
Hi?
these matters.
Thoraxes. Is thoraxis plurable? I
This
don't
one,
know.
some of you
But
may
anyway,
know.
that
This
flips
is
their shape
probably
around
the easiest to obtain and the most
and gives them some more
compendious
character. Now they're
Plants
looking a
of
little more
Gods
lively.
by Richard Evans Schultes,
Little
who's
ants.
Professor Emeritus of Botany at
And then I
Harvard.
went and
And this is
redabbed
basically
a
the
bunch of little
distillation
blobs
of his
onto her
life's
dress,
work.
giving the
It's
impression
filled
that
with
they're
pictures.
sort of
It
forming
has
her
all
shape
kinds of
and added a little more red
information
to the boat.
arranged in this kind of table
Alright,
form
let's
where
see
you
here if I
look
can
up
get
a
the
plant,
aperture dialed
get
down
a
enough to see
notion
all of
of
it.
what it looks like, what
On that
family
right
it
side where that
belongs to,
light
what
is
its
just a little
chemical
intense.
constituents are, and so forth. And it has a very good
Alright, I think that's about as good as it's going to get.
bibliography and a chemical appendix.
So, thanks for watching. That's
So
Adam
this
Sturch
is
broadcasting from
around
Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New
and
Mexico,
highly
working on oil
recommended.
painting Contact. Have a good night, Earth.
If you want to go